water vapor. Well, if the early Earth's atmosphere consisted of those gases, then Stanley Miller's experiment would not work. In fact, he himself tried it with those gases, and he found that he couldn't produce any amino acids at all. So the experiment falls apart once you use a more realistic mixture of gases in the apparatus.
Miller's test has been repeated many times using the correct atmospheric components. The results are always the same. The amino acids that generated so much enthusiasm in 1953 do not appear.
Even if Miller's experiment were valid, you're still light years away from making life. It comes down to this. No matter how many molecules you can produce with early Earth conditions, plausible conditions, you're still nowhere near producing a living cell.
Alright, I'll make this quick. Many scientists have different exact definitions on what life is, but three basics that I can tell is they have to be able to reproduce, use metabolism, be affected by evolution. Okay, and going on, Reza Hadrari, Ghadiri, from the Scripps Institute, works with self-replicating peptide chains, so we have reproduction. Peptides are, you guys know what peptides are, hopefully, unless you're a creationist. In 1996 was reported to make the first synthesized the self-replicating peptides, 32 amino acids long. I butchered that. Whatever. It had to use 2 fragments to replicate itself, and there were mistakes, along the way, which meant it got affected by evolution. So, 2 of the 3 criteria to life. And then in 1986, well, way before that, a decade before that, a man named Gunter von Kendrowski made the first self-complementary DNA strand. It was 6 nucleotides long. CCGCGG made perfect copies of itself every time. At least, as long as I know, as long as they, were doing the experiment. And I will stop it there for now. All right, later.
And here's how I know. If I take a sterile test tube and I put in a little bit of fluid with just the right salts, just the right balance of acidity and alkalinity, just the right temperature, the perfect solution for a living cell, and I put in it 1 living cell. This cell is alive. It has everything it needs for life. Now I take a sterile needle and I poke that cell, and all its stuff leaks out into this test tube. You have in this nice little test tube all the molecules you need for a living cell. Not just the pieces of the molecules, but the molecules themselves. And you cannot make a living cell out of them. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Okay, wow, back so soon, but, let's see, again, he's saying, well, you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you took a sports car now, and took it apart, it's not going to reassemble itself. No. But, okay, let's see. The pre-RNA world hypothesis. Simpler RNA have been suggested. Albert Esch Moser explored the stability of different RNA with a modified backbone. Placed the ribose with varying number of carbon sugars. Discovered 7 new kinds of nucleic acid-like structures. Discovered a 4-carbon sugar threose, dubbed TNA. Peter Nelson, a Danish chemist, synthesized in 1991, synthesized a peptide nucleic acid dubbed PNA. RNA-like with amino acid bases. It would have easily been abundant on the prebiotic Earth. Okay, now back to the douche.
So what makes you think that a few amino acids dissolved in the ocean are going to give you a living cell? It's totally unrealistic.
Stanley Miller's experiment was not the only unsuccessful attempt to explain how life originated. Beginning with Russian chemist Alexander Oparin's work in the 1920s, theorists have also proposed chance, chemical attraction, and biological seeding from outer space. As possible answers. Each has failed to account for how non-living chemicals could have arranged themselves into the most basic components of the first living cell. Strobel's research ultimately led him to conclude that materialistic explanations for the origin of life were deeply flawed. And his examination of negative evidence did not end with the question of first life. He also learned of weaknesses in the most celebrated icon of Darwinian evolution.
In Darwin's book on the origin of species, there's only one illustration. It's called the Tree of Life. Darwin used it to explain how every species of animal and plant that ever existed on Earth had evolved from the same common ancestor through small, gradual steps over enormous periods of time.
I don't know everything about the Tree of Life. I'm not that well read on it, but yeah, basically what it is, it's a diagram of, of how stuff evolved, where stuff branched off, and the thing is that, it's simplified, as he's showing a simplified version of it. It's not really a scientific thing. It looks like a illustration from a book, to make it look pretty, nothing more. But yeah, Lee Strobel, I know he's just lying about this stuff. He's blowing the stuff out of proportion and calling it negative evidence.
Even though Darwin's Tree of Life is included in virtually every biology textbook published over the last half-century, contrary to what we've been told, there is no conclusive evidence of the common origin of all life.
Perhaps the most damaging blow to Darwin's theory is the fossil record.